please welcome without any further ado, Mr. Russ Blackburn, the city manager of the beautiful city of Port St. Lucie, who has ample time to tell us everything he needs to, I promise. Here you go, Russ.
Well, good afternoon. So Teresa has already started with a big challenge that I have ample time. The truth is, my mom always said, don't try to put more than 5 pounds of sugar in the 5-pound bag. And that's a real challenge because there's lots going on in the city of Port St. Lucie. We are very fortunate to be one of the faster growing cities in the state, and recently U-Haul noted the number of cities that show up on their radar as the fastest growing cities based on their move-ins and move-outs, and we're in their top 20 nationwide of folks moving in and moving out of the city, but mostly moving in, which is a really positive thing. So I want to start out, because I know some of you will be on a tight timeline, I want to start out really thanking the people who helped make this happen. I'm very fortunate to work for a great city council. Mayor Orvek, Greg Orvek is here today. Stephanie Morgan, Shannon Martin may be here, might have snuck in. And the other members of our council are incredibly supportive of their organization and providing the leadership and the direction for our city that is making a big difference for every resident, but also all of you who have a business in Port St. Lucie or do business with our city. So I want to thank a few other folks, Christina Siperga, who is our communications director. She has assembled a really fantastic team, and Sarah Prohanska, Nicole Hersik, and Avi Molina. You'll see some really great drone shots in my presentation, and Avi's the guy. So he is really, really very good. We have 3 assistant city managers here today: David Graham, Patricia Roebling, Jesus Morejo, Kate Parmalee, and Teresa Lamar Sarnos, and then a host of other city employees that really, I get the privilege of speaking before you, but I'm not the one who does much of the work. And the council is incredibly supportive, and we've got a great team. So I want to start out and tell you a little bit about my theme today. So it's a year in review, so why would we be talking about planning our future? So as a city, it's very important to talk about what we did, but what's next? And it's really a little bit about what we've done in the last year has really been focusing on not only accomplishing some very specific projects and initiatives, but planning about what's next. So we start as a city with our strategic plan. I am incredibly proud of our city council, and you should be proud of your city council, that we focus on identifying our goals, our initiatives, our projects that we want to accomplish. And that's important. If you have a business, you set sales targets. If you are in local government, sometimes you just kind of muddle around who calls next, what person or entity is putting pressure on you to get something done. And truly, that's the way a lot of governmental entities work, but not Port St. Lucie. Port St. Lucie is driven by its strategic plan. So we have 7 goals that we've identified. And they're all the things that matter to you, making sure that we have good infrastructure, making sure that we're run efficiently and effectively, making sure that the citizens of our community have educational opportunities, whether it's our kids in pre-K all the way to folks who are doing extended education. So we live by our strategic plan, and we incorporate that strategic plan, the goals, the initiatives, and the projects in everything we do. So to develop that strategic plan, the goals tend to stay fairly static. They're big picture, parts of our DNA, what matters to your city. But every year we update that strategic plan to think about what are the big initiatives and then what are the projects that help us to accomplish that initiative. So we used a couple of tools that I want to just highlight. We used several, and certainly every time you interact with a council member or the mayor and you impart something that's important to you, or you interact with your staff and you tell us about something that's needed, those are all part of our input. But we started 2 years ago with two different structures that are very important. One is we do a survey of all of our citizens. It's a statistically valid survey. We ask folks in our community, how are we doing? What's important to you? And we've seen something fairly phenomenal. We did the first survey in 2009, so 10 years ago. And that survey, I would not brag about a whole lot, but it was our benchmark. We hadn't done one before. It may have been that was even better than in 2099 or 1999. But now 10 years later, we're in our second survey, and it tells a really good story. When you look at the trend line, you'll see that we've made a 20% improvement from 2009 to 2019 on how your city's doing almost across the board. And that's incredibly important, knowing that our goal, we use these surveys, we use our strategic plan to help guide how we're going and help us make improvements. So another tool that we used, and many of you participated, I would say of all of the communities I've worked in or seen, this worked better than almost any we've done. And I think Kate Parmalee, Christina, all of the communication staff, we held a citizen summit this winter. And over 400 citizens turned out to focus on each of our goals and talk to us about what the needs are, how we're doing. This is the second year in a row that we've done the Citizen Summit. Over 900 people turned out to talk to your council, your staff, to give their input, actually voted. You got to vote on what your priorities are with dollars, and we could see what citizens' priorities were through their votes, and not a vote cast at a ballot, but if you only had so much money and you had to spend it, where would you spend it? And it was really a phenomenal thing to see that many people engaged. And these are people who, they're not the folks who normally show up at our public hearings. They're not the folks who are regulars at council. Those folks have access and input. It was folks beyond that. And really, I thank all of our team that put on the Citizen Summit, and it really made a difference. So you can ask, well, how did you use that data? Well, last year at our Citizen Summit, from our citizen survey, we asked residents what is important to you. And one very specific question we asked was, if the county's half-cent sales tax were to pass, how would you want Port St. Lucie to spend the money? What projects would be important to you? And so thankfully, county commissioners, Howard, saw you here, all of the team that worked on the half-cent sales tax, and all of the voters of St. Lucie County, thank you for confidence and for giving us the opportunity to prove to you that we can get it done. So our survey identified priorities. Our citizens' first priority was St. Lucie West Boulevard. How can we improve that? Our second was sidewalks. We've been talking about sidewalks for a long time as a community. What can we do to make sure that we're actually furthering that talk and getting it done? So we used that input to, the council went almost verbatim by that input of what our citizens said in our citizen survey was important. And those are the projects that as a city we are implementing. I'm pleased to tell you that we are off to a jackrabbit start. We are really out, we've signed contracts for design of many of the projects. You're going to see the first major project at Floresta Boulevard and moving forward on Floresta. Starting off, the first phase will start off early next year, and we're going to drive forward to get that project completed. We're designing the St. Lucie West Boulevard intersection improvements. There are lots of really good things going on. So It's easy to survey. It's harder to do something about it. It's harder to say, okay, we heard you, but we're going to talk about it. No, we're doing something about it as a city. And I think you'll be very pleased. I know the county's doing the same thing, and you're going to be pleased with your local governments that we're going to use your hard-earned dollars through the Hefts and sales tax to make our community better. So another big initiative was one, I think I was here last May, and it was just kind of on the horizon. As you all know, one of the growing areas of Port St. Lucie and St. Lucie County is the Southern Grove area, the Tradition area. So Southern Grove, it's 3,400 acres or so overall, residential, the jobs corridor for the city. Last year, around this time, the city was presented with the opportunity of, city, do you want to own and manage the Southern Grove Jobs Corridor? And we couldn't turn it down. We just could not turn it down. It was our future for economic development. And so the city assumed the ownership of Southern Grove, and that comes with a whole lot of responsibilities. And we've quickly assimilated Southern Grove into everything we do. And I'm pleased to tell you that there are some great things happening at Southern Grove in our jobs corridor, but also overall in Southern Grove. So if you look, this is a map of the Southern Grove area. Let's see if I can get close to, yeah. So up here is Cleveland Clinic. Torrey Pines, many of you have heard about. Over here are residential areas, and all of this area right here, which is around 1,200 acres, is the city's jobs corridor, your jobs corridor. This is the place where the city has the opportunity to grow large footprint assembly, industrial, light industrial areas. So we started out by planning this area. We asked the Urban Land Institute to come in and give us their ideas. Urban Land Institute is one of the professional associations for professional economic development employees, folks who are developers, land planners. And Urban Land Institute came in, they spent a week with a panel of professionals helping the city envision what this area should look like, how the property should relate, where uses should be clustered. They came away with this concept plan of how the land that the city now owns should best be used. And knowing that this is our jobs corridor, they put a real focus down here on industrial uses of all kinds, commercial here in the center, some scattering of residential. It's a very good start for how this land should be used. At a later date, we'll most likely do a little more fine-tuned master plan, but this is a really good start and kind of helped us to understand how the property could best be used. But we're not just planning, we're doing. So this is a great graphic, and if you're looking at it, so Avi, raise your hand wherever you are. Avi Molina took a drone video and drone picture of City Electric. If you haven't been out to the Tradition area, to Southern Grove, down on Village Parkway, there's this behemoth of a building going up, 411,000 square feet. City Electric, also called TAMCO, and they got 3 or 4 other names. But this facility is incredible, and it's several football fields in size. So this is a graphic that I know the City Electric folks are going to want to have eventually. But it's shot by our drone, so it's looking down. So Frank McShane was someone we worked with very closely. And Frank has a few comments about his experience with the city.
3 years ago, we tabled the idea of expanding our facility. The question was, do we do it in Port St. Lucie, or do we look at somewhere else along the East Coast? As with any company, we did our due diligence. We looked at other towns and cities. Some of them were major cities, Charlotte, on the east coast here, and we also looked at Dallas in the central part of the country. And we ended up saying to ourselves, well, why do we need to leave Port St. Lucie? You know, this has been a good home for us for the last 20 years. It's where all our people are based, all the knowledge and the wealth of experience we have within our team is here in Port St. Lucie. And why would we want to destroy that? So for us, ultimately, community was a big part of the decision making. Over the last 18 months, the city have made exceptions, have pushed the boundaries to ensure that the project is running smoothly. I just think the flexibility and the willingness of the city to understand how things have changed, how technology has changed, and how those things affect a business and affect the city in order to make it more accommodating for companies to come here has been pretty amazing. And today we have a city that's very committed to helping industry, to helping people like ourselves make this our home.
So I want to thank Pete Tesh, who helped, and certainly Jill Marassa, Elijah Wooten, the city's business navigator. Frank's been holding our hand, dragging us along, and once in a while we would help Frank along and his team. And you see in a very short time, you know, bricks, mortar, lots of metal, and lots of concrete. So it's really working. And those are jobs that Port St. Lucie County had a very good chance of losing. You know, they were looking nationwide, looking at Charlotte, looking at Dallas, and had we not worked as a team, as a community, City Electric would have gone somewhere else. And because the team all worked, from the mayor, the council members, all worked incredibly hard to make sure City Electric stayed in Port St. Lucie. So another initiative, I mentioned those 7 goals that the city has, and one is quality education for everybody. And so an area of our community where within the city of Port St. Lucie, we didn't feel like we have the access that was needed for our residents to have skill training for folks in high school who may not want to go on to a post-secondary education, but want to get a skill that they can employ quickly and provide for themselves and their family. So the City Council recently approved a letter of intent with Somerset Charter School to develop a career technical academy. That academy will be located where, if everything goes right, on Village Parkway, right in kind of the hub of all this industry that is developing in Port St. Lucie. And so the young people going through those programs and getting their academies and career certificates will be able to perhaps intern, to learn from folks at City Electric, at Oculus, at all of the different businesses that are going to grow up in the Southern Grove area. Currently, the school board has approved conceptually that they would allow this to be a charter school. They're working out the details with Somerset. The city has indicated a willingness, if they get all the details worked out, to enter into a favorable lease that allows this building and this program to be located in the Southern Grove area. So another incredible opportunity for all of us as our community is Oculus. So I see Mr. Bob Zatarain has just come in. So Oculus was also here in Port St. Lucie in a small facility up in the St. Lucie West Industrial Park. So Oculus makes high-end lenses for ocular surgery. They started in Germany in the late 1800s and came to Port St. Lucie, have been thriving in Port St. Lucie, but wanted to expand. And just like City Electric, they had choices. They could be anywhere in the United States. Their products are not so big that they need to be on rail. They're not so big that they even need to be, put in the semi-trailer. But they are so valuable and so important that we wanted to keep Oculus here, and we are so glad that Bob and his team worked with the Port St. Lucie team, the economic development team, to ensure that Oculus stayed in St. Lucie County and Port St. Lucie. And we're going to hear from Bob just briefly.
We embarked on this project. It's been right at a year, maybe a little bit longer than a year, exploring where do we want to grow and expand in Port St. Lucie. We believe that over the next 10 to 12 years, 13 years, it's going to be just bustling with business and companies feeding off of each company, and maybe interrelated companies that sort of share the same kind of manufacturing philosophy. We picked the tradition area, and with the help of Peter Tesh and his team to start with. His team was, without a doubt, incredible in guiding us through the process. And then Mr. Elijah Wooden got involved, and then obviously our city manager, Russ Blackburn, and then our mayor, Greg Orvek, were involved in the whole process as we picked a parcel. We picked it, and the beauty of it is they understood that we needed to do our due diligence, which is what we're doing right here. And they've been incredibly patient and accommodating in that whole process.
Thank you, Bob. And thank you to the Kirschabels and everybody involved with Oculus. We really appreciate you staying here. So last year, when I visited you, the year before when I visited you, we had a couple of projects that are still with us. So some of you know it as the Vaccine and Genome Therapy Institute. We've tried to rebrand it as the Florida Center for Biosciences. I think it's kind of took, but maybe not as much, Mayor. So 108,000 square feet of high-end biological research. So incredible space, but very specialized. So we've been working over the last 2.5 years or so to market this building. We have a broker that's helping us. We've reached out, to a number of different entities all over the state, the nation, and the world. And the city still owns a building. But we have seen more activity and interest in this building in the last 3 months than in the last 3 years. There is a high likelihood that for the May meeting of City Council, we will have one or more letters of intent to look at the potential purchase of the Vaccine and Genome Therapy Institute, better known as the Florida Center for Biosciences. And we'll be going through a vetting process. Great letters of interest, because both of the entities looking to purchase this building are actually doing what the building was originally intended for. They're doing research. They will use the labs. They will spin off new businesses. They will grow in our community. And it is really a very positive thing. It's been a long time getting here, but sometimes you find that your timing is actually very good. And as we hear more about these opportunities, I think you'll agree with me that had we jumped on something earlier, we might have missed something very big for our city. And so that's really important to know. So we all know that joining the St. Lucie Medical Center in our area is now Cleveland Clinic. Cleveland Clinic announced their purchase of the Martin Health System this spring, and we've welcomed them. They really have made a big investment and are becoming a big member of our community. We appreciate that we have 2 world-class hospital systems in Port St. Lucie. Really makes life in our community, our quality of life better and our health care better.
We believe that the community here is going to benefit by being aligned with one of the larger academic healthcare systems in the nation. We believe that there is an immense opportunity for growth. We believe that there is a need for healthcare services, and we believe that we can even fill more of those needs in a growing population more adequately with our presence and through our collaboration. And the community will, through the presence of Cleveland Clinic in this part of Florida, have an access to immense knowledge and expertise of 60,000 caregiver-strong organizations such as ours.
So the City Council heard its newest home run opportunity on Monday evening. So many of you have been in the community for a while, know that the City Council, the County Commission, the state of Florida, all invested in Torrey Pines. It's a research entity. Dr. Houghton and his wife Pam have been fixtures in Port St. Lucie since they arrived here. They've been really wonderful additions to our community. But very soon after Torrey Pines made a decision to locate in Port St. Lucie in St. Lucie County, the National Institute of Health made a significant decision that reduced the amount of funding that was available for research. The CDC, that often does research, pulled back on their funding. So although Dr. Houghton and his team have continued to work and have done well here, they've never reached their potential, in part because some of the research dollars that they would have used dried up. So we're pleased to announce, and this was on this Port St. Lucie City Council meeting Monday night, that Florida International University has entered into a partnership. They've actually leased the space that now is Torrey Pines. They will be locating 18 principal scientists and their teams of researchers in the Torrey Pines building, and we are really happy about that. So the better news is that Dr. Houghton and Pam and their team will continue to be here. They will be occupying the building. We would expect sometime soon to see an addition to the name of the building that now says Torrey Pines, and it'll say FIU Torrey Pines or Torrey Pines FIU. They have to fight that out, but we're really pleased. And Dr. Houghton and team will have an affiliation agreement with FIU. It is not the campus. They won't be offering courses here. They'll be doing research here. They have their teams of scientists using their preeminence program, and ultimately it's been an interesting story. They've indicated they have about 5 scientists that they've been courting, and they're ready to come. And those scientists already have businesses, Pete. They already have companies that they've set up based on their research. So we've got another great economic development opportunity. Another little story that I heard, which I thought was phenomenal, and this came from Dr. Andres Gill, who is with FIU. They had made offers to at least 2 of the folks who are their initial hires last year to come to the Miami campus of FIU, and they turned them down. They circled back and said, well, what about Port St. Lucie? And they jumped on it really fast. So these are folks that may not go to Miami, but we are really happy to have them in Port St. Lucie. And Frank, I missed you. Thank you. Yes. So this is big news for our city, for our community. FIU here with a major presence, and the next big thing for the former VGTI building, some of the vision that occurred back 8 years ago is happening now, and that cluster of research I think is actually going to happen in our community. We're seeing really good signs. So we talked a lot about western Port St. Lucie, but eastern Port St. Lucie is hopping. So you'll see in a minute our building permits for single-family residences for the last year. About 50% of our building permits are for single-family lots in our city. That's important because that shows there is confidence, there is a belief that all parts of our city will grow and they make a good area for investment. So our infill, and we do infill on a grand scale, is really phenomenal for the city. So you can see, and for those of you who can't see, sorry that we need 2 screens in here almost, but so coming out of the recession in 2013, Port St. Lucie issued 327 single-family building permits. So that number started creeping up pretty fast as we got out of the recession. In 2017, it was 1,345 building permits. So a 59% increase between 2017 and 2018. In 2018, 2,147 new single-family building permits, almost equally divided between the western part of the city and the eastern and central part of the city, which speaks well for everybody who has businesses in the east or our central area, but also shows that we're as a city, as a community, we're growing and we have opportunities for everyone. So our new construction value from 2017 to 18 was almost $80 million worth of new construction. It's good for the folks in the county, good for the city, good for all of us, and good for you if you own a business, because those are folks who are building something in our community. So speaking of building, as we look to how we plan and how we grow as a city, one of the things we've done as a city is really looked at our development process. What can we do better? How can we make life easier for folks making an investment in Port St. Lucie and the people who are actually doing it? And so our building department's been a lead on this area. They are an accredited building department. They have made a lot of different changes in how they do business, and we're replicating that in the rest of our development area. One of our focus has been on online permitting. Now more than 30% of the city's building permits are issued online. Our goal is that you never have to come into our department. You're able to do it from your business, your office, or your home. And we're making leaps and bounds improvements there and adding more and more functions. So we've made a number of different initiatives in the department. I want to point one out that's kind of atypical. I think it's atypical for cities across the state. While we've been doing all this work to help make our process simpler, easier, and easy access, so you don't have to come in. We also know a lot of people do come into our building department. They do come in just to drop off their bundle of plans. And you've got to circle around and find a parking spot, take time out of your day to do that. We're actually building a drive-through, so you can drop your plans off, drop your information off without having to come in. And that will be complete and ready to operate in June of this year. So one of our recent expansions in the community was A&G Pools. And Art Allen could not be here because Art is moving into his new building, which we're very happy about. But Art is here.
I could move anywhere in the whole state of Florida, but I never had a doubt that we were going to find a piece of property here in Port St. Lucie and stay in Port St. Lucie. I mean, we get along with everybody gets along with us, and going through Port St. Lucie and everything else, they were quite helpful. They were very helpful in the whole situation. It's a team effort, I'm going to tell you right now. It's not just one department. We got the engineering department, we got the public works department, we got every one of them. Joel Dramas took his team together and set us down in a meeting from the day one and said, this is the way it's going to go. Anything you have a problem with, make sure you come to me and take care of it. And they're all on the same page. They're trying to do everything right. We're very happy to be in the new facility. It's an absolutely gorgeous. If this gets on tape, please come by and see it.
Probably Art would prefer if you come by tomorrow and not today. So we're in one of the jewels of Port St. Lucie, our Civic Center. I want to welcome Linda McCarty, our new Civic Center Director. So Linda's already brought needed change to our Civic Center. One of the things that we started last year that's worked very well is we did have a restrictive catering policy where you had to use the Civic Center caterer. Linda and her staff have been working with an open catering policy that we're getting high remarks on from folks who use the Civic Center. It's really worked very well. We see a few tweaks that we have to make it work even better. But it is, as you know, we are doing everything we can to make this your home and your venue for Port St. Lucie events, St. Lucie County events, Treasure Coast regional events. So when you're thinking of, whether it's having a corporate get-together, whether you want to have your wedding, come to our Civic Center. It's a great facility and is run very professionally. So the other challenge that the city of Port St. Lucie has had is still a challenge. Pete, we need a big industry to take this over, but the reality is that there's a lot of interest. It hasn't been sold yet, and that's the city center that we're in currently. So you may recall, if you know the history of this area, started out with a guy named DeGuardiola, who actually developed in Palm Beach County, Abacoa. DeGuardiola, at the beginning of the recession, sold to a woman named Lily Zong. Lily was a thief. She proclaimed to be a developer, but really was a thief, and tied the city center property, which is kind of all the property around the Civic Center, up now for how many years, Stephanie? About 8. Yeah, a long time. We are like the VGTI / Florida Center for Biosciences. We're seeing a lot of interest in this property now. I know that the receiver is considering one letter of intent, and I believe another is coming. I think there's a good chance something will happen soon, but it is not in your city council's control. We don't own it. It's owned by the SEC, the Federal Security and Exchange Commission, and so they have to make decisions what they're going to do, who they're going to partner with, and who they'll sell. They give us some input, but it's ultimately their decision. But there is good news. There's a site that wasn't tied up with the SEC right out on US 1 in front of the Civic Center / City Center area. A 3-story medical office building is going through our process right now. We're pulling forward, and it's going to work. I'm sure we've already worked to help make some of that a little easier for them. And so there is interest. This is a major node of economic development for our city. We are 100% committed. As soon as we can sort through the ownership issues with the SEC and get it out of their control, we're going to make it work as a city, because this is a jewel for Port St. Lucie. So we talk a lot about planning. So we have environmental issues and an environmental stewardship and responsibility. So the city has embarked on doing what we can do as a community to improve our water quality. We've been testing with Harbor Branch as a contractor to see how people in the Port St. Lucie and the surrounding area are impacting the North Fork and our waterways. We have started a project called a McCarty Ranch water farming, where we will store water out of the C-23 canal to help it cleanse and then put it back into the C-23 at a later date, cleaner and better. Those are all designed because that ultimately flows into the North Fork and ultimately merges with the Indian River Lagoon. And then one of the strategic initiatives that the City Council set this year is doing everything we can to convert septic tanks in our city so that those property owners are on public sewer and their waste and effluent is treated in a safe, sanitary manner. You'll be hearing more about that in the next year from the city. This is one of our big plans. We already have converted more septic tanks than any other community in the state, but we know we need to step it up and want to step it up. So we started early in the year, actually late last year, on a 10-year Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Some of you may have participated in that plan. And when we talk about all the things we're doing as a city, one of the things we're doing, is go back to, it's planning our future. So as we look at the parks that we have, we know as a growing city, we're going to need to do more, and this 10-year plan will be our guide. So we would expect that 10-year plan to go to the city council around the end of July. They'll be talking about it, determining and giving staff direction as to what parts of the plan we should implement. So last year I talked about a project that was just really, it's been on the books a long time in the planning phase. It's now in the reality phase, and that's the southern part of our Riverwalk project. And so we have received bids. We'll be awarding a contract in the next 45 days to construct a new boardwalk. This boardwalk, if you have been to the Botanical Gardens, the entryway to our Riverwalk South area, it's near the big ficus tree area, goes up to the bridge, Port St. Lucie Boulevard Bridge, and at a future phase, we'll go under the bridge and connect to the Veterans Parkway boardwalk. So you'll have almost a half a mile boardwalk that can be walked. So if you think about, you've gone to dinner somewhere in Port St. Lucie, and you want to stroll, you want to kind of commune with nature and see the river, this will be your destination. You can start at the north, or you can start at the south. You have a really long boardwalk with a great view. You'll be able to see the North Fork, which along that whole area is wild and natural, and really get a sense of what's in your community. So we also, this year, relocated the Peacock House and the Peacock Hunting Lodge. It was a big project. Some of you might have been inconvenienced following a house, driving down the road. Some of you may have seen it. But these homes, while we're planning for the future, we also need to preserve our past. And the Peacock House and the Peacock family, some of you know where Peacock Boulevard is, was a part of our past. And we want to make sure that people know what's happened in the past in Port St. Lucie as well. So we moved the homes. They are now on their permanent foundation. The exterior is renovated. The interior will be a little slower coming. We're working with grants to get that done. So we have a little video that shows, it's pretty short, but it's pretty cool. So in addition to all the great things that we do as a city, one of our foundations that we build upon is being a safe community. So Port St. Lucie is the safest large city in Florida. We've been recognized nationally as one of the safest cities in the nation. One internet-based group that ranks cities says we're the 4th safest city in the United States. Another one says we're the 14th safest city, and I would say being anywhere in the top 15 is really, really good. We're the 9th safest city in Florida, which has a lot of little cities. There are almost 500 cities in the state. So the fact that we're the 9th safest city is really important. So as I wind down, I want to let you know about a couple of things that I'm urging you to go on the city's website and give it a try. So we just released a project called Project Tracker. It's a geo-based database. It starts with a map with a whole lot of dots on it. Each one of those dots is a city project. You can click on that dot and it tells you all about the project, what it cost, where it is it started and is it complete, when will it be complete, Really a phenomenal tool. If you're a realtor, and I'm sure we have some folks who work in the real estate industry, use this tool. This will help you a lot. It's free. It's yours. Use it to see what's going on around you. If you're a homeowner, you want to know what's happening in your community, use our project tracker. We keep it updated. We have pledged to the mayor and council. We're going to keep it updated so it'll always be fresh. And you'll know exactly what's going on around you and what kind of projects your city's working on and what the current status of that project is. So I'd urge you to go online, give it a try. You'll add it to your favorites pretty fast. So I always urge you to look at your city's website. We have a lot of information on there. We have a great communication team. So one thing that I didn't talk about, Jack, any idea? Crosstown, thank you, Jackie. All right. Didn't talk about Crosstown at all. Last year, #1 priority for the city. Year before last, #1 priority for the city. Last 30 years, #1 priority for the city. Didn't say a word about it. The mayor's going to tar and feather me. However, we're going to have the grand opening of Crosstown Parkway on the 28th of September. So everybody here is invited. You've got a special invitation, a VIP invitation. It's going to be a great community celebration. We're planning, a grouping. We'll have folks, vendors on the bridge. It'll be a time when you can walk the bridge, bring your family. You can look down and see the School of Mullet underneath. We'll have food trucks. We're going to have a real fun celebration that day. We are seeking sponsors. If you are interested in being a financial sponsor, we will lend your name, and we would like to lend your name to different elements of this celebration. You can certainly see me, call any of your council members. You can't leave out the door until you sign up. But we are seeking sponsors. We want you to financially participate in this, but we also want you to personally participate. So I want to thank you, Teresa, for the invitation. It's hard to get all the sugar in the 5-pound bag, and there's lots going on in your city. You have a great mayor and city council. You have a hardworking city team, but we only work well because you let us. You're engaged. You give us your ideas. You give us encouragement. Sometimes you say, "What are you thinking about?" And it really, without you, it wouldn't work as a community, and we're proud to serve you. So thank you very much.